Let's get your luck. Up until Deputy Boyd Barrett, I think there has been an elephant in the room of this debate. There was certainly an elephant in the room in terms of the Minister's speech, which in the draft speech, which obviously time prevented him fully delivering, but there was one sentence about the four words that are missing, or the four letters, TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP. And in the draft speech that was handed out, he emphasises the need to maintain momentum in these negotiations. That's the conclusion that's drawn, despite the leaks and what they demonstrate. And I think the government now has a real problem on the issue of TTIP, because the argument for the world's biggest free trade agreement, for a race to the bottom in terms of environmental, labour and consumer standards in this country, has been built on two planks. One, secrecy. Secrecy shrouded in talk about transparency. And two, the notion, completely unbacked up by any facts or real objective studies, that this is going to bring a boon in terms of investment, in terms of jobs, and in particular in terms of agriculture, that is going to open up the US market to Irish agriculture. And those two planks are now falling apart under the impact of the leaks which appeared on the Greenpeace website a few days ago. Firstly, in terms of what is demonstrated in general, it confirms what we, the opponents of TTIP, have been saying for years. To quote the director of Greenpeace Europe, "These leaked documents give us an unparalleled look at the scope of US demands to lower or circumvent EU protections for environment and public health as part of TTIP. The EU position is very bad, and the US position is terrible. The prospect of a TTIP compromising within that range is an awful one. The way is being cleared for a race to the bottom in environmental, consumer protection and public health standards." And every single one of the commitments that the European Commission and the government gave are shown not to be accurate by the leaks. So the leaks demonstrate there's a conscious attempt by the US side to undermine European regulatory standards. The leaks demonstrate that without question. The leaks don't demonstrate any serious effort by the EU side to reject that. The leaks demonstrate that the US side wants the right of US big business to have an input into the creation of new regulations in advance of any democratic input by the European Parliament, by national parliaments. The leaks demonstrate, in contrast to what the Minister Bruton said on a number of occasions, that the US is determined to push ahead with an investor-state dispute settlement mechanism, private arbitration courts where big business can sue states because they interfere with the so-called right to profit. The leaks demonstrate that the vital precautionary principle is under attack by the US side, and the EU side is doing nothing about it. And the leaks demonstrate that the Commission has been consciously misleading the European Parliament and the broader public if you contrast their notes of what they're going to say there and the reality of what's being demonstrated. It's a good thing that we have the leaks. It assists what we anti-TTIP activists have called the Dracula strategy of drawing it out into the open, allowing the public to see what's going on. A crucial part of that is the impact that TTIP will have on agriculture. Because in contrast to it being a great benefit to Irish agriculture, the leaks and a study came out last week by Friends of the Earth Europe, trading away EU farmers. They demonstrate that it will be a disaster from the point of view of European agriculture, certainly from the point of view of small producers. It's a key US offensive aim in the negotiations, and the aim is to lower regulatory barriers, what we consider basic things about consumer rights, consumer protection and the quality of our food. That's the key US aim here, and the result would be a win for big US agribusiness, a significant loss for consumers in terms of health, in terms of quality of what they're eating, and definitely in terms of small farmers. So the US side consider all of what we consider to be basic consumer safety standards. They consider them to be unjustified barriers to trade. They consider the ban on beef from animals treated with growth hormones as, I quote, not supported by science. They consider the ban on pork from animals treated with ractopamine, another growth promoter, as Certain trading partners consider factors other than science. They consider the traceability requirements for foods derived from GM crops as commercially unfeasible. They consider buffer zones to prevent GM contamination as unnecessary and burdensome. They consider the labelling of GM foods as creating technical barriers to trade by wrongly implying that these foods are unsafe. They consider a ban on poultry meat treated with pathogen reduction chemical washes, as in chlorine, not to appear to be based on science. They consider EU limits on pesticide residues allowed in foods as unreasonably low thresholds. They consider the EU's lower threshold for somatic cell counts in milk as a quality rather than food safety criterion. They demonstrate clearly the precautionary principle is under attack in the leaks, but also numerous models done all demonstrate that the impact on agriculture in the EU, and in particular in Ireland, because of the centrality of beef, would be absolutely devastating. While US agriculture contribution to GDP would increase by 1.9%, studies foresee a decline of up to 0.8% for the EU. But in particular, beef is foremost in the firing line. To quote from the Friends of the Earth report, all the economic modelling studies predict that if EU tariffs are eliminated, there will be a significant increase in imports of US beef. Traditional beef grazing farms, which produce high-quality meat, are considered particularly vulnerable to imports of cheaper US beef. So I welcome the protest today by the ICSA about the Mercosur agreement and about TTIP, and I think we need to mobilise to stop this deal between the 1% on both sides of the Atlantic against the interests of ordinary people, against our environment, against labour regulations and so on. Just the last point I would like to raise, because the Minister did speak about some fishing issues, is that the question of undocumented non-EU migrant fishing crews, because after years of denial on the part of the fishing industry and a lack of interest on the part of the outgoing government, the sterling work of Ken Fleming and the ITF, with the help of the Guardian newspaper, exposed the scale and breadth of abuses taking place. The ensuing scandal resulted in the announcement of an atypical work permit regime capped at 500 places. So just under 30 seconds, please, Carla. With the onus on the owners of fishing vessels to register crews. The figure of 500 emanated from an engagement between the Departments of Agriculture and Justice with the representatives of the fishing industry, although there was a credible report in The Guardian that 1,000 permits could be filled. That was January. As of last week, my office has been informed that only 9 permit applications have been made, and no serious enforcement measures have been put in place ahead of the May deadline for compliance. We won't be letting this issue go, and we'll be pursuing any future minister on this.
Thank you, Deputy Murphy.